As promised, today we'll be going over my preliminary numbers for taxes. After gathering all my tax documents and numbers last week, I'm ready to give it all to my tax person at my appointment later this week, and ran my numbers through ChatGPT to get a rough idea of what my refund or owings would be. And honestly, it was a pleasant surprise after making so much income from my portfolio this year. I'll go through those results as well as my main tax and dividend numbers from the year. As you know, I've lived heavily out of my portfolio in 2025 and relied heavily on high-yield ETFs for income and also a lot on margin as well. So the expectation might have been that I'd owe a lot of taxes on those dividends, but we'll see that together, whether that panned out or not. As always, I share all of my numbers with radical transparency, and you can see my full portfolio and performance with no paywall. Everything is linked in the description below for free if you want to see my full portfolio on Snowball and poke at the numbers yourself. Give a like and subscribe if you appreciate this transparency. Before I get started, of course, just the usual disclaimer. This video is for entertainment and education purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing here should be taken as financial, investment, or especially tax advice today. I'm simply sharing my personal investing journey and documenting my own results very transparently. Investing always carries risk, especially when using margin, and you can potentially lose money. Don't copy what I'm investing in blindly without understanding the risks and doing your own due diligence. No returns are guaranteed. And before we properly get started, we'll just kind of quickly go over the monthly flow chart that I use. And this is the layoff edition, right? So I invest 100% of my income on this channel. Previously, I'd invest roughly 10.8K a month, but now I'll be closer to $1,152 every week with my unemployment income. I invested normally into growth and high yield ETFs, but with the layoff, I'll be focusing on safer high yield ETFs for now to keep my monthly cash flow growing. I've stopped using a traditional bank account to live entirely out of my Robinhood brokerage account. I use cheap margin of 4.5% to bridge the gap between my bills and my dividends. And the goal is to ideally never sell a share or take money out of the account, apart from rebalancing, really. I want to forever compound my growth and my high yield assets and eventually have my monthly dividends exceed my monthly expenses. For an in-depth breakdown of the old chart that I'll eventually get back to once I have a job again, check out the link at the top right. And let's just get started. We pop over to Robinhood, just kind of get an update on where stuff is overnight. So looks like overnight looking positive for tomorrow. We'll see if it stays green tomorrow, but up 0.65% or $1,000. Buying power has shifted a bit as bills came out, and also my margin interest dropped on Friday. So this has changed up a bit. But yeah, the main event that we want to look at is actually my taxes. So if we pop over to the sheet here, I've kind of gathered all the main numbers that we'll kind of need to look at together. So yeah, the big thing that I had to do last week, one was to kind of sort through all my business expenses. So anything entertainment related to the YouTube channel and kind of the side income that I made this year from my previous side business stuff related to my career. So yeah, that kind of gets broken down into multiple categories here. So first time I did my taxes with this tax person that I've been using since 2020. She basically broke it down into like these different categories. So that first year I hadn't broken it down, and that took her a lot of time to kind of sort through all my raw transactions I basically gave her. So since then I've been kind of doing that up front just to kind of help save a little bit on cost there for the tax person and time. So like breaks down to cloud storage, internet, reference materials. Cloud storage is stuff like Google Drive or like iCloud for the iPhone. Reference materials, that can be like any movies that I buy, given that I'm in entertainment, any art books, things like that, right? That can all kind of like be referenced for when you're doing game dev stuff. Research costs, that could even be just going to see a movie, going to see an art exhibit potentially. So yeah, anything that can be entertainment related. So it's a pretty broad category, which is nice. Subscription, so like things like Netflix, Hulu, that can all fit into that because that broadly fits into entertainment. Telephone, that's like my cell phone basically. And this is prorated too, because the telephone's not always being used for business stuff. And same for the internet over there. Website hosting, so that's just generally you have to have like a website to kind of help sell yourself for work and game dev. I'm deducting part of my office as well too. So that's like roughly, yeah, I do my full mortgage, but then that's only prorated at 12.5% for basically the square footage of the office within the house, right? The office expenses actually didn't do too many this year or at all really. Travel, so travel that can be like reference trips, right? So that kind of falls into the entertainment bucket as well. So any meals that are related to that. So some of my Japan travel kind of fell under the travel bucket there as far as kind of like gathering reference and things like that. And utilities for the office as well. So that's prorated as well, 25%. And any new hardware that you might have purchased for the office specifically, right? Or for the side business. So yeah, that's hardware and stuff that can get depreciated. So had to like upgrade monitors this year and things like that. So altogether, that's roughly 25.4K of deductions. So that gets deducted basically on my side income that I made this year. So it's been actually, this is the lowest it's been since I started doing the side business stuff since 2020. Some years it's gone as high as like 10K or whatnot. So technically it's a money losing business right now as I kind of build that income up. So now that I've pivoted to YouTube, I'm definitely kind of doing a big push on that. And hopefully this number will be even bigger this year as I kind of grow the channel and stuff. And yeah, what's nice is that there's kind of no ceiling to that. I can kind of just keep growing that. My previous side career or side business career stuff I was doing before, like it would just kind of take a lot of time. So that kind of had a cap. Like when I was really going hard on it, that's when I was kind of doing 10K, but that took up a lot of stuff. So that's why I'm very happy to do YouTube stuff. It's different and kind of enjoy it a lot more, honestly, than the side career stuff I was doing before. So yeah, once I brought over stuff from both my Fidelity and Robinhood, so I had part of the year that was in Fidelity, right? So there was some dividends and stuff that came in there. And then also Robinhood. So I kind of tallied all those together for like ordinary dividends, substitute payments. So these are substitute payments or payment-in-lieu. And actually that's something we need to get into. So before we keep going. So one thing that's important to note when you're using margin, and I don't think many people know this, but like if you check your margin agreement properly, right, you might come across this section here. So hypothecation, right? And shout out to Margin Mindset who did a video on this a couple months ago. It's gone now, but like this was a good call out as far as what happens with your shares when you use margin. So yeah, if you read this basically, right, this basically just says that like Robinhood or any brokerage, I think pretty much every brokerage has this clause, is that if you are using margin, they are allowed to kind of like lend your shares and use them for loans and stuff like that. And then if they do, any dividends that you receive from those shares get treated as substitute payments or payments in lieu of dividends, right? So the problem with that is that all gets treated as ordinary income. So like if that maybe would have been like dividend income, so ROC or whatnot, that kind of gets stripped away, right? So it's a bit problematic. So because you get your marginal tax rate on that. So in my case, that'd be like 32%, right? But yeah, that's very important to keep in mind if you're doing margin. The only way, as far as I know, and someone chime in there if you know of another way, the only way is to not have any margin being used to basically get around that, as far as I know. So this one's a important one, especially for all the high yield investors, right? And we'll get into that, all my percentages for that today too. And actually how I'm offsetting a lot of it. So I have my ordinary dividends here, my substitute payments, our payment in lieu. Maybe we can kind of just like do this just so it's in there and factored in. Cool. There's the qualified dividend. So anything from like any stocks that you've held for more than a year or things like SCHD is generally all qualified dividends. Non-dividend income, if you see that in your 1099, that's actually ROC. So I actually had a decent amount there. And then capital gains distributions. They distributed any from any stocks that you had. I also had like a lot of realized short income, or not income, but gains and losses. So this was basically from CRF that sold a loss last year just because I accidentally held through the rights offering. My plan originally was to actually participate in the rights offering and kind of get those discounted shares. But then as I knew that I was going to move to Robinhood, I kind of let that go. And I basically sold at a loss to kind of switch all of my CRF to XPay. So realized some losses there. That's a little bit of realized longs from selling out of BST initially to go to CRF. So it was a lot of jumping around between those three. And then in Robinhood, yeah, a couple realized shorts of gains losses there. But then there was mostly a big realized long from when I sold part of Microsoft and Apple last year, if you remember that video. So altogether, I had minus 7.2K of realized short gains and losses, and also 16.8K of realized long gains and losses. So, and then yeah, and also I had some carryover from last year. So I've mentioned this before, but like when I sold a bunch of stock back in 2022 to basically make up the money to buy the house I'm currently in, I sold for like a 16K loss at the time because I sold like, yeah, in the depths of 2022. And that's kind of went to the extreme of kind of not having any emergency fund or any savings, right? I was kind of had everything invested, and that was kind of like the ugly side of it. But what's nice is that, yeah, that those losses carry over from year to year as long as you use it or don't use it, right? So I had like 16K. I've used a couple like throughout the years. So I had like roughly about 9.2K left of that 16K loss. So 6.5K of that was short and 2.6K of that was long. So that basically gets added to the realized short and loss for this year. So for example, my realized short would actually be minus 13.8K if you add that up. And then my realized long would be 14.1K if you minus that out, right? So really my realized gains loss for this year after all that. So you basically minus these two out after that. And then my net realized gain loss for this year is $345. So of all the like over 9K gains, if you minus these out, I'm only paying taxes on $345 of it, which is nice. So yeah, that's kind of the benefits of kind of doing basically tax loss harvesting in past years and kind of carrying it forward to this year, right, as far as those losses. And then also my margin interest. So I had like 4K of margin interest on Fidelity. So a lot more because my rate was a lot higher. I was kind of in like the 10-11% range for margin interest. Then I have a lot less in Robinhood at minus 2.7K. So for roughly a total of 6.8K of margin interest, which is fully deductible too, right? So I can use this to basically deduct basically my ordinary dividends here. So after margin deduction, really what I'm paying taxes on for my ordinary dividends of the 7.2K is $454 of it, which is pretty nice. And that would be on the 32% marginal tax rate as well. And also I have my mortgage interest, which is a big chunk. So 24.7K of that is my actual mortgage and 3.3K of that is my HELOC. So you add that up, that's 28.1K that I can deduct from my income proper. Property taxes can be deducted as well, so $4,000 there. And then also those business deductions that we just talked about earlier. And now, yeah, if we go back on all the dividends I received, basically. So I kind of percentage these out, right? So 14%. So yeah, my total dividends that I received last year were basically $52,687, which is pretty great. So that got added on top of my income that I made last year, which was $205,329. And yeah, so 14% of those dividends were ordinary dividends. So this is taxable at the marginal tax rate, right? 54%, so over 50% of the dividends were actually substitute payments or payment in lieu because of this hypothecation, right? So not great. So that's quite a bit of dividends that get taxed on. And then qualified dividends here. So that's like a small 3%, so $1,586. And then I had a decent amount of ROC still, which is good. So despite the substitute payments, I still got some ROC, which is nice. So that's 15K essentially, if we round that down. And yeah, a tiny 1% of capital gains distributions. This must have been honestly mostly from BST potentially, from when I was on Fidelity. So yeah, overall that adds up to 100% there. So you can kind of really see the split of like how the dividends landed, right? From the high yield dividends to everything else. I'm definitely going to be monitoring the substitute payments and payment in lieu for future years, just to kind of see how that's tracking, if this stays relatively stable in the 50% range, or if it gets to be like way more and I'm not getting any ROC anymore. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But the good thing is, I think like what happened with my taxes is that a lot of that gets offset basically because of like my mortgage interest, my property taxes, my business deductions, right? So yeah, that's where it's at. So as far as my total investment deductions, there's quite a bit. So 1916K that I can kind of minus out. So really that's, yeah, all these basically that I was going over, right? The margin interest and the carryover. So yeah, the carryover losses only affect the realized short and long. And then the margin interest, like I said, only covers the ordinary dividends there. And yeah, that's the calculation for the realized short and loss, short and long that we talked about. Basically my ordinary dividends that's going to get taxed on instead of the 7.2K, thanks to the margin interest that I'm deducting. And yeah, my marginal tax rate this year is 32%. So yeah, that's how it is for the dividends. Yeah, as far as my wages this year, so total I made $205,329. So this is basically my 179K salary, base salary, plus a 15% annual bonus that we got every year at my previous job before I got laid off. So yeah, on that already, I paid 41.4K of taxes, just withheld from my paychecks. Like I mentioned in a previous video too, Social Security wages caps at a certain point, so at 176.1K. So once you hit that, you actually stop getting taxed for that. So mine hit like pretty much around the October timeframe when I got my bonus, right? So yeah, 10.9K of this federal income tax was for Social Security, right? And then yeah, this is what gets affected for Medicare tax. So 3.3K of Medicare tax withheld. And then my side business income that I mentioned. So again, smallest that I've had in a while, but hoping to grow this even more next year. So that's all the numbers there, really. So basically what I did is that like I basically took a screenshot of this whole setup and then ran it through ChatGPT just to kind of get a just rough idea of what potentially my refund or my owings would be and how bad it would be. And yeah, of course, that's not a substitute for an actual tax person personally. So I'm happy to hire someone to actually run the numbers and make sure that everything is above board, especially given that I have like all these deductions too based on the business stuff. So that's really when I started getting a tax person, when I had to do this kind of stuff. Right? I just wanted to make sure that all that was kosher. So yeah, so if we pop down over here, this is basically everything that I ran through ChatGPT. And then, so it kind of just ran the numbers, right, for my W-2 wages, investment income, dividend income, side business. It's a big loss for the business over here, right? 22.6K loss. Not running a very successful business, but hopefully over time going to get that better with as the channel grows. So hoping to see that better over time. And after all the adjustments they're doing with the margin interest, mortgage, property taxes, so that, and then, so yeah, total income after all the adjustments is like 228.8K. And what's really taxable is 196.7K after all the deductions and everything together, right? So yeah, that's what it's looking like here. So ordinary income tax, 39.9K plus the tax on qualified dividends here, so the 2.2K. So really my estimated federal income tax was supposed to be 40.2K and I paid 41.4K. So sounds like I overpaid a bit. So yeah, you can kind of see here. So really, ChatGPT is estimating that I might get a $1,100 refund, which is great. So considering that I made 52.6K of extra income this year with the dividends, this is amazing, honestly. I'm happy to not pay any extra taxes on that and potentially maybe get a refund. So we'll see how that plays out after Thursday. And I'll probably make a follow-up video after that on Thursday, or maybe we'll just roll into like my portfolio update for next weekend. But yeah, pretty great, right? Last year I did get a refund, like that was my largest refund to date because that was like kind of my first full year in the house and all my deductions and everything. And I got a 12K refund last year. So yeah, you can kind of see that this year, a good chunk of that refund got eaten up to pay for taxes essentially for these dividends, right? So yeah, roughly 11K of the refund that I would have gotten had I not been making all these dividends this year, right? But yeah, honestly, very happy that I'm not going to owe taxes and that I'll get a refund. So looking forward to getting that money and getting that invested too. Like this just counts as any other income, and I'm gonna invest that like a normal paycheck. So yeah, that's my taxes this year. Yeah, definitely a lot of numbers to chew through. So apologize for how dense this is, but that's all my numbers. I hope that was useful and kind of nice to see. I think the key thing for me and like what's working is really because I have the side business stuff. Like really in the US, what they really want to encourage you to do is to like own a house and start a business, right? So kind of have both of those, and that's how you can kind of get the most preferential tax treatment and kind of get like the deductions that kind of help get you a refund at the end of the day. So something to consider. I know it's not for everybody to be doing, but yeah, try to think of like a skill that you can kind of monetize or start a YouTube channel or something, right? Just because that stuff helps a lot and you can kind of deduct a lot more on your taxes as far as business deductions. So definitely worth considering, or consider working towards getting a house because that's a big chunk as well too. Just mortgage interest and property taxes that you can deduct off your taxes, right? So this is like 32K off the bat, right? Way more than the standard deduction to deduct off your taxes. So that's the video. So as usual, if you want to follow me on channels off of YouTube, there's a bunch of different ways of doing that. There's Blossom Social, where you can kind of see all my trades. There's Snowball Analytics, which is completely free as well. All these links are in the description below. You'll see all my numbers, fully transparent, right? Like, yeah, love showing everything transparently to everybody here. You see all those same numbers that I look at and show on video every week. My Patreon as well that you can check out. All my videos are free on here as well. And really just in case there's more shenanigans with YouTube, stuff is backed up here. And then of course the Discord, just a lot of, I gave a lot of heads up for my taxes to people on here, right? So you kind of saw all the same stuff that I'm showing you here, more in detail and talking through it. But yeah, I love talking to people here in between videos, and yeah, just a lot of great conversation there. You see all my trade alerts as well too, mostly cashback stuff lately, given that I don't have a job yet. But yeah, working on that this week. Have a few final round interviews this week, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully we'll be able to land something by the end of this week. We'll keep everyone posted on that. But yeah, that's the video. If you appreciate the transparency and kind of want to keep seeing how I'm navigating this layoff and how I'm still living out of the brokerage, give a like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification to be notified about future videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.